Issue 28. Some nice little goblin gits.
Now, issue 28 comes with 9 minis known as Zarbag's Gits. Now, they're very goblin-looking creatures, but they're actually called grots, and they're very fun little things. Basically, their whole spiel, their whole trick is mushrooms of any types. Mushrooms that poison you, mushrooms that make you stronger, mushrooms that are actually alive, called squigs, that go out and kind of kill you. Their whole thing is the use of these mushrooms as hallucinogenics, poison, bombs, blasts, you name it. If anything can be done with a mushroom, they've done it with it. Now, the most entertaining one, of course, is the squigs, because the squig, as you can see here, can have many uses, so it comes in many forms. They're fairly dangerous, so they often eat their masters, who can only kind of coax them by prodding them and cajoling them with baits and prods. They'll eat anything. They're essentially fungus, so they grow in the caverns. There's a great variety to them, and the other thing about the squigs is even if you lose something in battle, there's always more of them out there. You have here Zarbag's Gits, which are basically they're an unlikely group of adventurers who serve the Moon Clan Shaman Zarbag. So they overwhelm their enemies with magic, steel, and biting squigs, some of which you get in this issue. Of course, you have here the names of the different characters. So you got Zarbag, you got Drizgit, the Squig Herder, Prog the Netter, Dibs, Redknap, Stickit, Gobbalook, Bone Raka, and Snurk Sourtongue. So Snurk Sourtongue, of course, is a special one who we'll talk about in a moment. You have the usual build guide and the paint guide, and because these grots are actually quite small, it's not quite as much of a labor of love as you would think, because they're small. They're painted kind of quickly. You have here the War Scrolls. You have Zarbag himself, and of course the War Scroll for Zarbag's Gits. And you have here, of course, the War Scroll for the Loon Smasher Fanatics, which are basically the guys who like the hallucinogenic part of it, that they drink this stuff, go mad, and get incredible strength, and kind of go into battle in kind of with anything to hand, normally a big huge ball that they use to squish their enemies with. And you have, of course, the mission, which is Behold the Bad Moon. So let's have a look at these minis. And as you can see here, you get 9 of them, and they're all very fun, very imaginative little things. Now, this, of course, is Zarbag himself, and as you can see, there is a lot of detail to it. He's surrounded by the mushrooms that he uses. He has a little scythe with another wee pot of mushrooms here, and you have a kind of a luminescent figure in a lamp here that he has trapped. And yep, he's just a really cool, tiny little mini. Zarbag is his name, and these are his grots. And as you can see, he's one eye bigger than the rest, but it was a fun, easy little paint to kind of put through. You have here one of his gits. So you have here the man with the little bow, which I find it quite hilarious that his hood is so large it actually covers his eyesight. So I'm assuming he doesn't hit quite all the time. But nevertheless, this is the second of the minis, and I believe this guy is called Dibs. We have here the guy with the net, which is Prog the Netter. Now, he was, again, a fun little one, because there's already bits in the net, such as other mushrooms. So these guys are just kind of covered in mushrooms all the time. And, yep, there's a lot of nice little detail there to them. And there's great variety in these guys. You have this character, of course, which is Drizgit the Squig Herder. So this is the guy who kind of poke and prod the squigs into action. And of course, he's a little bit more armored, because obviously they're user hazardous. And I quite like the fact that he doesn't have a cigar. He has a mushroom in his mouth that he's kind of smoking, kind of like a cigar. So there's a great bit of fun with these minis. And he has, of course, some coin down at the bottom. So he's a grot of kind of higher status than most, because he's because of his position. We have here, this guy is called Stick It. So he has a little arrow that's purposely in his hat, so he has one to spare whenever he's in trouble. And again, he's another little ranged character, but he's one of Zarbag's Gits. You have here Redcap, who actually has a mushroom as a hat, and has a couple of little nails in it, but he's another ranged character, as you can see, and one of the actual Zarbag Gits. And we have here the Fanatic. Now, these guys are very fun. So there's actually two minis here. There's one guy, poor little fella, squished under the big metal ball, and you have the other Fanatic that's basically chugging back the potion to make him mad and super strong and to go into battle with no kind of regard for his life or any other life out there. And he's called Snurk Sourtongue. But this was kind of a fun one to paint because you have the actual liquid flowing into his hand from the pot. So it kind of an unusual kind of action piece that you don't normally see in these minis. But the fact that there's a tiny little grot squished under here as well was just a nice fun little thing to paint and notice when you did it. And you have the two squigs, who incredibly are basically living, moving mushrooms. They're quite nasty. You wouldn't want to pet it because, as you can see, he's got a big bone in his mouth, so they will eat anything, including their masters that they go into battle with. So this fella is called Bone Raka, no doubt because of the actual big bone in his mouth. And the last fella is called Gabaluk. So he's just basically charging into battle, ready and willing to eat absolutely anything. And the fact that the way the model is built, you can kind of see into his gut, so it's fun to kind of make his mouth wet with a little bit of varnish and just kind of give this salivating kind of effect to them, because squigs, as we have learned from the lore, are always hungry. And so this is Zarbag's Gits, a very fun little issue, such a fun issue actually, that I had to get an extra 2 issues for my friends Patrick and Tony because they wanted them for themselves. So that, ladies and gentlemen, was issue 28. Join us next week for issue 29, where we get to look at another paint issue. So until then, good luck, God bless, and stay safe.